What's up, folks? Mike for CMCC Builds here with character build number 9, The Dark Knight. Bruce Wayne, the Caped Crusader, the world's greatest detective, the Batman. This has been without a doubt the most requested build to date, and with the release of the Batman movie, I was incredibly excited to dive into this build. Batman was never my favorite comic book or comic book character. I wasn't into the animated series at all, but Batman was without a doubt my favorite superhero movie for nearly my entire childhood. I mean, from 89 to 2000, there wasn't a lot to choose from, but still this character holds a special place in my heart. And I think I did the character justice with this build. That said, anyone who claims to have made a perfect Batman D&D build is lying to you. It's just not possible. The game doesn't allow it. First, Batman needs a Batmobile. I have some ways to replicate some of the Batmobile's powers, some mounts that can do damage and protect the rider, along with spells that can be flavored to come from the mount, is one way to tackle this problem, but it won't ever be perfect. Now, even if we're going to forego making the Batmobile and focus solely on Batman the person, the highly trained warrior, the master of stealth and fear, the detective skills and keen intellect, the utility belt with all those wonderful toys, and of course the Batsuit, we still can't make the perfect build. Why? Well, because of this one line under the Monk's martial arts feature. At first level, you gain the following benefits while you are unarmed or wielding only monk weapons, and you aren't wearing armor or wielding a shield. There is no way in Dungeons & Dragons 5e for a character to use dexterity-based unarmed strikes and wear armor of any kind. That just blows my mind. I could see a heavy armor restriction or even a medium armor restriction here in the same way that the flying races can only use their flight if they aren't wearing those armors, but all armor, it just seems so extreme. So because of this rule, I had to scrap the ideal version of the Batman build that had a bat suit made of armor, which Batman has used since 1940, where he had a hidden bulletproof vest under his suit, for a version of the bat suit that won't have D&D armor in the truest sense. But again, I have some workarounds that should satisfy our needs here. Now, on top of this batsuit armor issue, to get an accurate skill set for Batman, we have 10 skill proficiencies and 3 tool proficiencies that we want to complete this build. That is a lot. This is the closest I've come and likely will ever come to a skill monkey build. But in addition to that, it can kind of do a bit of everything. Scout, stealth, dish out solid damage, control, move, and track enemies. This was no small feat to accomplish. And finally, we're building Batman, and Batman doesn't kill, although he's certainly not a pacifist. And in Dungeons & Dragons, you're going to be faced with a ton of combat and lots of killing. So how do we rectify these facts? There is one paragraph rule in the player's handbook, and it reads, knocking a creature out. Sometimes an attacker wants to incapacitate a foe rather than deal a killing blow. When an attacker reduces a creature to 0 hit points with a melee attack, the attacker can knock the creature out. The attacker can make this choice the instant the damage is dealt, the creature falls unconscious and is stable. As Batman, we can engage in combat as normal, but simply announce your intent to your DM to knock out or incapacitate your enemy rather than kill them. What happens after they're unconscious is up to you and your team. Let the fun RP begin. And with that, let's dive into the build. For our race, Variant Human seems like the obvious pick. Bruce Wayne is a human, and Variant Human is one of the most powerful racial choices in the game. However, we need to find ways to replicate Batman's utility belt features, and for that we need spells and abilities that we can't get through the free feat that Variant Human gets us. So as painful as it is for me to forego not only the extra feat, but the extra skill proficiency, this build is in desperate need of both of those, by the way. We will go with another choice. The Mark of Storm Half-Elf is actually a very strong pick. All of the level 1 and 2 spells you get through this race are perfect for what you need, but we have some other ways to get a couple of these spells. The new version of the Air Genasi has slightly different spells, and these are spells we can't get through any of our other class choices. So I'm going to take this race here, but honestly, either will work for our needs. Make sure you're using the Monsters of the Multiverse version of the Air Genasi and not the original version. If that version is not available to you, go with Mark of the Storm Half-Elf. The Multiverse version gives us a +2 and a +1, or 3 +1s to our stats. We're going to be a humanoid and take medium size because the new version allows us to be a small race if we choose. Walking speed is actually 35 feet now, and we also get unending breath. You can hold your breath indefinitely while you're not incapacitated. This is great to replicate the rebreather in Batman's utility belt, which provides up to 2.5 hours of oxygen. Then we get lightning resistance, which is the first of many features that will replicate the Batsuit's defensive capabilities. And we also get dark vision out to 60 feet, which works as a solid analog for night vision goggles. And the final ability is a big one for us. We get Mingle with the Wind. This gives us several spells that we can cast once without a spell slot, and then as many times as we want with the spell slots available to us. This functions a bit differently and flat better than racial spells in older versions of these races. We get Shocking Grasp as a cantrip. We need this one to replicate Batman's tasers that he uses in place of guns or traditional weapons. It's also used to incapacitate enemies, and Shocking Grasp does remove the target's ability to use reactions, which is mini incapacitation of sorts. As I always say, don't forget that you get advantage on attacks on targets wearing metal armor, which is many of the creatures you will face. At 3rd level, we will get Featherfall, and this will be the first spell that replicates the bat lines or bat ropes, the various iterations of the grappling hooks that Batman fires off to stop himself and others from falling. This is an essential spell for this build. Any build that doesn't have this spell or the next spell just isn't a Batman build of any accuracy. And that next spell is Levitate, which we will get at 5th level. Featherfall stops us and others from falling, but Levitate allows us to actively raise someone in the air. Again, a key feature of the bat lines. For your languages, pick whichever languages work for you in your campaign. For our background, let's go ahead and make a custom background with 2 skills and 2 tool proficiencies. It's incredibly important that we get as many of our desired skills as possible. Doesn't matter which order you take the skills, so I'll start here with Insight because interrogation skills are huge for Batman, and Insight is essential to any detective type character. We'll also take Stealth because we're Batman. Half of what he does is sneaking up on people or sneaking away without them noticing. He was trained by the League of Assassins or Shadows. He lives in the darkness, but he wasn't born in it, sadly. Stealth is key, and we will make sure the stat is as high as we can get it for the build. And for the 2 tool proficiencies, take Tinker's Tools and Alchemist Supplies because Bruce is a genius who had no issue improving and modifying the Batsuit and other tools or weapons to fit his needs. And for the background feature, I've seen some people take Noble here. Don't do that. This isn't a Bruce Wayne build, this is a Batman build. Take Haunted One. Those who look into your eyes can see that you have faced unimaginable horror and that you are no stranger to darkness. Though they might fear you, commoners will extend you every courtesy and do their utmost to help you, unless you have shown yourself to be a danger to them. They will even take up arms to fight alongside you, should you find yourself facing an enemy alone. This was made for Batman. The noble Bruce Wayne is just a mask to hide this Haunted One persona that consumes him. It's perfect. For our abilities, we'll go with an 8 in Strength, 15 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, a 10 Intelligence, 15 Wisdom, and 8 Charisma. As always, we're picking stats that support our mechanical needs for the build, not attempting to replicate the actual physical and mental characteristics of this particular character. That's a fool's errand with the point buy system. We'll take a +2 in Dexterity and the +1 in Wisdom from our racial bumps. For our starting class, we have to go Rogue here, for no other reason than we need all the skill proficiencies. We currently have 2 of the 10 we need, and this gives us 4 more, which is the best we can hope for with a starting class. We also get Thieves' Tools, which is the 3rd and final tool proficiency that we want with this build. Dexterity saving throw proficiency works perfectly for the build, but the weapon and armor proficiencies will both be unnecessary and redundant shortly. For the 4 proficiencies, take Acrobatics and Athletics to replicate Batman's peak human athleticism. Intimidation is perfect for a character whose entire reason for existence is to strike fear into the heart of criminals. And Investigation, which along with Insight solidifies our detective capabilities. We also get Expertise in 2 skills, which allows us to double our proficiency bonus. Honestly, any skill will work here, but I chose Acrobatics and Stealth mainly because Batman is insanely awesome at both of these. He borders on the superhuman in these areas, but also because the combat and utility functions of both skills are fairly high in this game, so it makes the build more effective. Thieves' Cant doesn't do much for us. Perhaps the League of Shadows has its own language known only to the members, or perhaps Batman during his years of investigations has learned the various ways that the underground communicate with each other to keep the police off their backs. So if you want to use it, you can flavor it however you want. And finally, at this level, we get Sneak Attack. Right now, that's an extra 1d6 per turn, not per round, and yes, that will be important to this build. To get sneak attack damage, we need to use a finesse or ranged weapon, so unarmed strikes don't count, which still blows my mind. And we need advantage or an ally within 5 feet of the target. For equipment, go ahead and wear armor at this level, there's no reason not to do so. I'd also use a dagger, which we will reskin as a batarang. You can use darts for this purpose, but daggers work better for us since you can also use them in melee, which will occasionally happen. Reskinning weapons in this way has been raw, rules as written since the PHB, so your DM should have no issues with you doing this. At level 2, we're going to take a level of Fighter. The weapon and armor proficiencies are nice, but won't be needed by us in most cases. Second Wind gives us a bonus action heal, some quick first aid that Bruce can use to patch himself up quickly in battle. And of course we get a fighting style. There are 3 fighting styles we want with this build, and unfortunately we can only get 2. Thrown weapon fighting would be nice, and if you can make this work, I would strongly suggest you get it. But more important than that fighting style is the unarmed fighting style. This gives us the 1d8 attacks that we need to be an effective unarmed character. If we do have the batarangs in our hand, then that unarmed strike becomes a d6, which is fine. It's a 1 point on average difference, but most of the time we'll have empty hands. This is where the thrown weapon fighting style pairs so nicely here. That would allow us to draw thrown weapons, batarangs, as part of an attack. So if for some reason we used our free object interaction, we can still draw our weapons, which we will eventually want to do every time for either a bonus action attack or an off-turn reaction attack. The reason for this is that sneak attack and some of our abilities will key off attacks with weapons only. Not just melee weapon attacks. Don't worry, we'll make it work, but note that the tactics will change as we level up. Levels 3 through 7, we're actually going to go into Monk. So at level 3, ditch the armor, because we get unarmored defense, which equals 10 plus dex and wisdom mods. That plus 3 from wisdom, I would personally flavor as the bat suit armor doing its thing. It's still thin and elastic, but provides an extra level of protection beyond our defensive fighting capabilities. We also get the martial arts feature that I alluded to in the intro. We can use dexterity instead of strength for the attack and damage rolls of unarmed strikes and monk weapons. And yes, our batarangs are monk weapons, so they will scale as we level up, which is nice. And when we use the attack action with an unarmed strike or monk weapon on our turn, we can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action. So now we can use the batarang either in melee or range to get sneak attack damage in, and use our bonus action to get another unarmed strike in. And we can even use our free object interaction at the end of our turn to take out another batarang if we so desire. At level 4, Monk 2, we get Dedicated Weapon, which allows us to turn pretty much any non-heavy or special weapon into a monk weapon. Good to have, we won't use it often. We also get Unarmored Movement, which increases our speed by 10 feet. So now we have an impressive 45 movement speed, and we get Ki equal to our monk level. We don't get a ton of Ki points, but they do come back on a short rest, which is nice. Right now, we can spend those Ki points on Flurry of Blows for some extra bonus action attacks, or Patient Defense to take the dodge action as a bonus action, or Step of the Wind to take the disengage or dash actions as a bonus action, which rogues can do at level 2, for free, unlimited times. Monks can't. That sucks, but we're a rogue too, so we will rectify this eventually. Level 5, Monk 3, we get Ki-fueled attacks, and this allows us to make a bonus action attack even if we don't take the attack action, which is actually nice, because we do have spells, which we may want to cast as our main action with this character. Deflect Missiles is also a cool ability that allows us to reduce damage on ranged attacks and potentially fire those projectiles back at enemies. This is totally Batman's bracers, deflecting gunfire back at enemies. And we get our monastic tradition. We gotta go with Way of the Shadow here. There are some other decent options, but this is the ninja subclass. It's gonna really enhance our stealth and even replicate some of our movement needs. Shadow Arts allows us to cast Darkness, Dark Vision, Pass Without a Trace, and Silence without material components for just 2 key points. Why we can't cast this at least once for free is beyond me. Just another in a long list of Wizards of the Coast missteps when it comes to monks as far as I'm concerned. We also get the Minor Illusion cantrip, which is nice to have. All of these spells can either be Batman's unique abilities or tools from his utility belt that he uses to distract enemies or hide himself. At Monk 4, we get Quicken Healing. For 2 key points, we can heal a martial arts die plus proficiency bonus. This ability is not good. Slowfall, however, is a feature that is both pretty good and extremely thematic for us. We can use a reaction to reduce any falling damage equal to 5 times our monk level. This only affects us, so use it when Featherfall is unavailable or unnecessary. We also get an ASI or feat here. We're going to want to take the Skill Expert feat to bump our dexterity to 18 and get an additional skill and expertise in a skill. I take Deception. Again, when you're a superhero trying to hide your secret identity from criminals and your secret life from loved ones, Deception becomes an incredibly important skill to possess. For expertise, I would take Investigation. With a low intelligence, we need the biggest bump we can get for the world's greatest detective. At Monk 5, we get Focused Aim. We can spend 1 to 3 key points to increase our attack roll by 2 to 6 points. Kind of meh in terms of power, but if we miss that sneak attack, that extra bonus could mean quite a decent increase to our damage that round. Use this sparingly because the cost is substantial, especially with only 5 total key points right now. We get Extra Attack. It's level 7, which isn't great, but our bonus action attacks help to mitigate that hardship of delaying this feature. And we get the one that everyone loves, Stunning Strike. Maybe the most overrated ability in the game? I'm not sure. The effect is without a doubt powerful. When we hit another creature with a melee weapon attack, which can be an unarmed strike, for 1 key point we can attempt a stunning strike. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or be stunned until the end of your next turn. Okay, so the cost is expensive because we only have 5 key points right now, and con saves are the absolute worst saves for the enemies. And it keys off our wisdom rather than dex, so our save DC, as for most monks, is a bit lower than it would be if it functioned more like the Battlemaster maneuvers. All that said, if it lands, this is a devastating strike to the enemy. A stunned creature can't move, speak, take actions or reactions, and auto-fails strength and dex saves, and attacks have advantage against them. It's good, but I don't know exactly how thematic it is for Batman, but it's completely within his skill set to incapacitate and stun enemies, both from a pure hand-to-hand combat perspective, but also by using tech to disrupt an enemy's mind or powers. Level 8, we're going to multi-class into Ranger. Yeah, I know it's a lot, and we ain't done yet. This gives us Favored Foe, so we can add a d4 to a single attack per turn, proficiency bonus times per day. It doesn't use a spell slot, but it does require concentration, so keep that in mind with your other spells. We get another proficiency. The 3 we want are Perception, Survival for tracking skills, and Sleight of Hand for some of the more intricate things Batman does, like picking locks and escaping restraints, etc. I'm going to take Perception here and forego the remaining 2. Perception is incredibly important, and someone as observant as Batman should be strong in this area. Deft Explorer gives us 2 more languages, pick whichever work again, and another skill expertise. I went with Intimidation because of the importance of the Batman as a symbol of fear among criminals, but literally any skill you have will be thematic and work well. Level 9, we're going to grab a second level of Ranger for a fighting style and spellcasting. Thrown weapon fighting, again, would be great, but we absolutely need some druid cantrips here, so take Druidic Warrior. We'll take the Thorn Whip cantrip, which we just can't bypass. Like the Mandalorian and Spider-Man builds before this one, being able to grab an enemy with our various grappling hooks is essential to any Batman build. It's a 100% must-have. I would also take something like Create Bonfire for our second cantrip. This does a good job of replicating some of the explosive tech that Batman has, or even some of the fire-producing effects of the Batmobile. Either works for our purposes. And for our level 1 Ranger spells, we'll of course want Hunter's Mark. This provides a bit of a damage boost, but it competes heavily for our bonus actions, so use this sparingly and make sure you fully understand the effects of foregoing Flurry of Blows or extra bonus action attacks to cast this spell. The second and oft ignored second clause of this spell gives us advantage on any perception or survival checks you make to find a marked creature, a perfect analog for Batman's tracking devices and tracers. And we'll also want Absorb Elements for our second spell as another Batsuit type effect that reduces damage. The Batsuit is fire resistant along with being bulletproof and knife proof, so this works well for us. Ensnaring Strike is another good spell that does a decent job of replicating the Batman's bolas that he uses to restrain escaping enemies, but unfortunately we don't have the spells known to make this work. Levels 10 and 11, we're going to go back into Fighter. We get the always great Action Surge for a once per short rest extra action. I have exactly 1 build that hasn't gotten this ability, which is kind of crazy and something I haven't really considered until right now. We also get our Martial Archetype, and we definitely want to take Battlemaster. We get 4 D8 superiority dice that we can use to fuel our maneuvers, which thankfully will be based off our dexterity for our save DC. Student of War gives us proficiency with a tool. Go ahead and take Smith's tools for more of that crafting vibe, or another tool to your liking. There are a lot of maneuvers that we want on this character. Batman does so many different things and he does them all well. It makes it incredibly difficult to encompass the totality of his skills and abilities, but it also gives us options, which is nice. So which maneuver should we take? Quick Toss is a strong first pick. This allows us more flexibility with our batarangs. Now we can attack twice with our fists, and even when we don't have a free object interaction or a key point to spend, we can use a superiority die, which adds on to our damage and allows us to attack with our thrown weapon as a bonus action. And we can draw the weapon as part of the action. We have no shortage of bonus action options at this point. Trip Attack is another strong maneuver that when used with Thorn Whip will move your enemy and knock them prone in the exact manner that a Bat Claw would. And finally, the very powerful Menacing Attack is perfectly thematic for Batman, who regularly strikes fear into the hearts of enemies. On a failed wisdom save, after we hit an enemy, they will be frightened of us until the end of our next turn. Levels 12 and 13, we're going to go back to Rogue. This gives us Cunning Action, so we can now use our bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide, free of cost. Take that, monks. At level 3, our sneak attack bumps to 2d6, and we get Steady Aim, which allows us to use a bonus action to get advantage on the next attack roll, as long as we don't spend any movement. We also get our Roguish archetype. There are some decent options, but I really feel the Assassin fits too well to bypass. And since we're only doing a small dip into Rogue, this class provides some solid features right up front. First, we get proficiency in the Disguise and Poisoner's kits. The Disguise kit makes perfect sense for any masked hero. Poisoner's kit, less so, but let's not forget that Batman essentially poisons Superman in The Dark Knight Returns, and he'll often tranquilize criminals with fast-acting anesthesia, paralytic agents, or other chemicals and drugs. All these are forms of poisoning, so I would have no issue with using this if the situation arises. Just don't make the poison deadly. And we get the Assassinate feature, which works so well with a stealthy character like this, and will work even better as we ensure we win initiative as much as possible. This gives us advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn in combat yet. So even without surprise, as long as we win initiative, we can get advantage on any creature we want. And let's not forget, we have Action Surge, so we theoretically have 6 attacks, 4 with both actions and 2 with a bonus action Flurry of Blows, all with advantage. Some of those can be with sneak attack or favored foe damage for another 1d4 and 2d6 damage. And now if we surprise enemies, any of those hits we score will be a critical hit, so make sure you save your sneak attack and favored foe damage for criticals, along with any superiority dice you want to spend to really make use of the double damage dice. At level 14, we're going to multi-class a final time, and here we're going to go with Cleric. Batman is certainly not a cleric, you may be saying to yourself. First, Batman's passion for fighting crime certainly borders on the religious, but aside from that, if we go Tempest Cleric, which we will, this offers us 3 spells that we absolutely need for this build. Again, if you come across a Batman build without 2 of these 3 spells, then it just is not Batman. It might kind of seem like Batman, but it's not Batman. So why Tempest Domain Cleric? Well, first, we get heavy armor proficiency, so if we ever decide to go Dark Knight Returns style Batman and want to strap on that heavy armor and suck up the movement penalty and the martial arts feature exclusion, then you can do that now. You're old, worn down, slower, strap on that hulking metal and go to work. We also get Wrath of the Storm, another reaction ability that allows us to do lightning damage to enemies that hit us. It's only 2d8, but it's another tool in our belt and replicates a taser decently well. And of course we get spells. And the first cantrip we're going to take is Guidance. Guidance can be used on initiative rolls, and we're going to use it every chance we get before battle. You're going to sneak ahead around that corner to see if the enemies are hiding out in that room over there? Sure. Cast Guidance on yourself and go ahead and sneak in. As soon as you need to roll for initiative, go ahead and add the 2.5 extra from Guidance to your initiative roll. That brings our total to an average of plus 6.5 on initiative rolls. Pretty good. Not amazing, but still good. We'll make that better before this build is done. Some other cantrips that work are Light for your flashlight, or even your Batmobile's headlights, and Thaumaturgy, because if anyone can make his voice boom, it's certainly Batman. For our level 1 spells, there are some strong picks that aren't particularly thematic, but the one I'm most interested in is already on our auto-prepared list, and that's Fog Cloud. If you're playing Batman, you need smoke grenades and smoke pellets. Get stuck with enemies surrounding you, toss a smoke pellet, and get out of dodge. Thunderwave is also auto-prepared and does a nice job of mimicking a concussive grenade or mine that Batman would use. I also like Guiding Bolt for another spell that mimics a blast from the Batmobile, and Cure Wounds for Batman's utility belt medkit. Beyond that, there's nothing particularly Batman-esque that I want. I'd take Bane and Bless because they can be flavored as causing fear in your enemies or rallying your allies to make each worse or better respectively. We'll take Cleric right through level 17, which gives us our Channeled Divinity. Here we can turn undead or use Destructive Wrath to max out any lightning or thunder damage rather than rolling dice. I would largely ignore the turn undead feature as it doesn't fit the character at all and focus on using Destructive Wrath on spells like Shocking Grasp, which would do 32 damage on a hit, or Upcast Thunder Waves, or one of our second level spells. Another auto-prepared spell, Shatter, which perfectly simulates Batman's pellet grenades, explosive gels, and concussion mines. With 4 levels of Cleric and 2 levels of Ranger, we have 3rd level spell slots, so we can cast Shatter at 3rd level for 48 damage that can be maxed out at 32 damage with Destructive Wrath. Do this whenever you get multiple enemies in that area of effect. Shatter's AoE is relatively small, but getting 2 or more enemies is absolutely possible with optimal placement and some luck. Blindness, Deafness, and Hold Person are additional spells that can be flavored as a flashbang or Batman's bolas incapacitating enemies. I also like Spiritual Weapon for yet another bonus action attack as a last resort when you run out of other resources, but also as a way to replicate Batman's additional tech that he would set up to ambush enemies, or even the Batmobile ramming an enemy, controlled by the remote in Batman's belt. Don't forget that the damage done by Spiritual Weapon is force, not radiant, so this also fits thematically with the Batmobile flavor. And with the ASIR feat, we'll want to take Martial Adept. This gives us a D6 superiority die to add to our 4 D8s, and 2 more maneuvers that we desperately want. Take Ambush, which allows us to add a die to a stealth roll, which we will almost never do. Our stealth is plus 16 right now. 17 is literally the lowest roll we can get. Or we can add it to our initiative, which will give us another plus 3.5 or plus 4.5, depending on which superiority die we use. So now we're at around a plus 11 to our initiative, which is much, much more respectable for this character. It will get better before we're finished too. For our second maneuver, take Brace. This allows us to take an attack whenever someone enters the range of our weapon, which is 5 feet. This is particularly awesome with sneak attack, so we can apply that sneak attack damage twice in a round with this maneuver. So that's another 3d6 on top of the 1d6 plus 4 we would normally do with an attack. If we have Hunter's Mark going, that would be 5d6 plus 4 damage on the enemy's turn. That helps our damage output quite a bit. For our final 3 levels, we're going to finish up with Monk. This gives us key empowered strikes, so our unarmed attacks now count as magical. If you're having issues with facing a ton of creatures with resistance to non-magical attacks, make sure you take this level earlier so your damage output isn't severely hindered. Our unarmored movement bumps to plus 15 feet, which gives us 50 feet of movement speed. And Shadow Monk gives us Shadow Step, which allows us to teleport as a bonus action in dim light or darkness into another space of dim light or darkness, and get advantage on our first melee attack before the end of our turn. This ability doesn't cost key points. I legitimately can't believe that. Not because it's a great ability, it's not, but because everything a monk does costs key points. Good on Wizards for making this free. Does this fit for Batman? Yes, it does. We need a way to replicate Batman's line launcher and the ability to move horizontally across battlefields. This is the perfect way for us to do that. At level 7, we get Evasion to only take half damage on failed dex saves or no damage on successful dex saves. Excellent, right in line with what we need for the character. Stillness of Mind allows us to use our action to end one effect that is causing us to be charmed or frightened. I like this ability for Batman, who has dedicated his life to overcoming fear, being immune to fear, even at one point in Batman Begins becoming inoculated to fear. That said, using an action to do this is not good. This is another monk ability that works for us thematically, but it doesn't help much in the power department. And finally, at level 20, we get our 8th key point and a final ASIR feat, and here we'll take Alert to get that plus 5 to initiative, which all but ensures that we win initiative every single combat. We can no longer be surprised while conscious, and other creatures don't get advantage on attack rolls even if we can't see them. Perfect synergy for when we toss out a smoke grenade and throw up a fog cloud. This normally creates a situation where everyone has advantage and disadvantage on attack rolls, which makes it a wash, so it's just straight rolls, but Alert means they don't have advantage when we can't see them, so our attacks are a straight roll, and theirs will remain at disadvantage. So we can get that initiative bump and the defensive bumps with the Alert feat here. One final thing I'd like to mention is that if you go this route with your Batman build, talk to your DM about eventually giving you a pair of bracers of defense. It's a nice plus 2 to your AC, but more importantly, it's a nice analog for Batman's own bracers that he uses to deflect strikes from swords or even gunfire. I don't think your DM should have any problem with that at some point during your campaign. There you have it, the Dark Knight himself. Unarmed, unarmored, and unfazed. I actually have a different version of this build that relies on intelligence, strength, actual armor, and a Batmobile substitute that I was planning on including in this video, but it's already longer than I wanted it to be. Maybe if this video does like 1,000 views in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll make an alt version of this build into a video. If not, perhaps I'll save it for down the road a bit. This one ended up as kind of an insane multi-class build that somehow still packs a punch, has tons of utility, decent survivability, solid control, and really great movement. It was far from easy, but a ton of fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed building it. As always, please let me know what you liked, hated, and would have done differently down in the comments. I try to respond to everyone, and I will keep doing that for as long as I can. I appreciate every single one of you. Without you, all this would just be stuck in my head, and I'd have no reason to take the time to get it out. For that, I am incredibly thankful. Please like, subscribe, share, all the YouTube things, and I'll see you here next time. Thanks, everyone.